grid here, but it will be a multi-class structure for the Focus Cup in 2025. So the cars are lining up on the grid. This grid for the first of the two races that we'll see will be based on the times that they set in qualifying this morning, and then, as is usually the format, if you're not familiar with it, the race 2 grid positions are reversed in blocks of 6 as per the finishing positions of this race that we'll see. So in other words, that means 1 to 6 get reversed. If you finish 6th, you'll start race 2 from pole. If you win it, you'll start from 6th. If you finish in 7th place, then the next batch of 6 get reversed. So if you finish 7th, you'll start 12th on the grid, and whoever finishes 12th will start 7th, and so on and so on and so on. Each batch of 6 gets reversed for race number 2. So it does mean there's work to do. The man that starts this race from pole position, Lewis Clark, is not only the reigning champion, he had the most perfect weekend at Donington Park. You get 30 points if you qualify on pole position in the Focus Cup. You get 30 points for a race win over the course of each one of the 2 races. You also get extra points for fastest lap as well. 5 points per race. Well, Lewis Clark, the reigning champion from 2023, qualified on pole, so picked up maximum points at Donington Park for qualifying on pole. He won race 1. He won race 2, and he set the fastest lap in both of the races. So he is on a maximum of 100 points coming into this weekend, the most perfect start to his title defence. What can he do at Brands Hatch? We saw plenty of racing here in 2023 at Brands Hatch. We actually had 6 Focus Cup races at Brands Hatch over the course of the 2023 championship season. 4 of them were on the Indy circuit. I think the remaining 2 did take place on the Grand Prix circuit, and all of those Brands Hatch winners from 2023 are on the grid here. And 5 race wins went to the cars that were on the front row of the grid. Lewis Clark took a single win, that was on the Indy circuit. John Baker, who starts on the outside of the front row of the grid, took 4 wins at Brands Hatch. I think one of those was on the Grand Prix circuit, the other 3 came on the Indy circuit. And also starting on the third row of the grid, Simon Waugh, he was a Brands Hatch winner back in 2023 as well. So we do have all 6 of the wins that took place in 2023. 3 of those drivers sharing them are all represented on the grid here. And what are fine conditions. Slightly overcast, actually, but it's a nice warm ambient temperature here and a very light breeze, not much at all. So it certainly feels as though spring is definitely here and summer is only just around the corner. And what a great place to go racing, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Infamous, undulating, challenging, and world famous. So the cars are going to head off on their formation lap. They will do a full formation lap of the Grand Prix circuit, which gives us plenty of time to guide you through the grid. I don't believe we're going to get a graphic for the grid, but I can guide you through the way that they will line up and tell you a little bit about the drivers and how they got on in previous years. The man who starts from pole position is the number 1 car of Lewis Clark. As we say, a Brands Hatch race winner last year. He is the reigning champion, hence he proudly carries the number 1 on his car. And lining up alongside him is the blue number 10 car in the hands of John Baker, 4 times a Brands Hatch winner last year. He actually finished 4th overall in the championship, not just in 2023, but in 2022 as well, having finished 7th in it in 2021. Row 2 of the grid is the number 23 car of Simon Watts, a man who has been in this championship every single year since it first started in 2019. His best championship finish was back in 2020, where he finished 5th in the championship, but he has finished 6th for the last 2 years. And alongside him is number 81, Ian Mitchell, who is runner-up in the 2023 championship. Row 3 of the grid is number 3, which is Paul Taylor. He lines up alongside number 22, Simon Waugh, another winner from Brands Hatch in 2023. He finished 3rd in last year's championship, having finished 4th the year before, but he can trace his roots back to the inaugural championship in 2019. And row 4 of the grid, a man who has been around Focus racing since the very beginning, number 77. Nice to see him back, Richard Avis, because I don't think he was present at Donington Park. There is the test car for next year that I was talking about. Richard Avis, who has had a best championship finish of 3rd place in 2022. He finished 8th in the standings last year, having done a part season. He lines up alongside the number 27 car, which is Ian Graham, who is 7th in the championship standings last year. The next row of the grid is row number 5, number 64, Chris Broad, another driver I don't believe we saw out at Donington Park. He lines up alongside 2 times former runner-up in this championship, the number 44 car, which is Gary Mitchell. Gary was runner-up in 2020 and in 2021 as well. And then as we move on to row number 6, it's the first of 2 Mintex liveried cars that we've got out in the field. The first of which is number 21, Sarah Hall, just heading through the shot there. And the next of which I was expecting to be Gary Mitchell's. Yeah, his is the first of the Mentex cars, and Sarah Hall's is the next. So yeah, alongside Sarah Hall is number 11, which is Jonathan Ogden at the wheel of the ABS liveried car. Then off the back of the grid, that petrol-engined ST Mark 3.5 Focus, which once fully developed by Simon Walton and the team at Swan Flight and the Focus Cup, they're expecting to be around about 5 seconds per lap quicker on the longer circuits like Donington Park. The reason being, it's petrol engine, of course it delivers that lap time in a very different way, but it's got 300 brake horsepower, whereas the current diesel engine cars are around about 175 brake horsepower. So lots of weaving being done to try and warm up the Control Nankang tyres. All of these cars identical specification, all of them prepared centrally as well by Simon Walton's Focus Cup team. And with Lewis Clark and John Baker lining up on the front row of the grid, be interesting to see how the pair of them get on. Simon Watts is next up. He had a 5th and a 6th at Donington Park last time out, so he comes into this weekend's championship standings line 6th in the standings. Has previously been a race winner in the Focus Cup, so he'll be hoping to get himself onto the podium for the first time this season. And Simon Walton, by the look of things, is opting to start from the pit lane, so we are expecting him to continue in this race. And but of course what he won't want to do in what is a test and development car is get embroiled in the championship squabbles that are going on, so he'll probably start from the pit lane and then give himself a few laps to catch the pack, and once he starts catching, I would imagine then he'll bring that car back into the pit lane and retire it, which is what he tends to do. He'll do, half a dozen laps just to, again, use it as testing to develop the car for the 2025 championship season. So there we are, the silver car with its pink flashes in the hands of Lewis Clark, lining up on the front row of the grid. The blue car of Jonathan Baker alongside. Then it's the orange car with the white and the blue of Simon Watts. The revs will begin to rise, and as we go green here for the 3rd time this season, it's a brilliant start from Ian Mitchell from what was the 2nd row of the grid. He draws himself alongside Jonathan Baker, but there's already problems. Richard Davis and Simon Waugh have got themselves together. Richard Davis is pointing in the wrong direction. Simon Waugh escapes the scene. But for Richard Davis, hopefully he'll be able to get going as the main pack of cars head up towards the braking area for Druids for the first time. Lewis Clark leads the way. The fast-starting Ian Mitchell is there in 2nd place, and Paul Taylor from the 3rd row of the grid sneaks his way up the inside of Jonathan Baker. So that is now going to be Paul Taylor up into 3rd position. Jonathan Baker down into 4th. And 5th, that looks as though that's number 27 car. Yeah, that's Ian Graham who sits there in 5th place. The complete weed control car, trying to draw himself alongside Jonathan Baker, prizing the door open, or trying to as they head up towards Surtees, but he cannot quite squeeze his way through. So whilst the main pack of cars head onto the Grand Prix loop, I can confirm Richard Davis, who was pointing in the wrong direction at the start line, has got going. It was rather delayed by the time he had fired the car back up again. Simon Walton has also started as expected from the pit lane at the wheel of the development car, I believe. So round through Hawthorne Bend they'll go. Jonathan Baker from his slowish start down from 2nd into 4th position, but trying to sit on the coattails of Paul Taylor as they head along the Derek Winter Straight and round through the right-hander at Westfield for the first time. From there the circuit descends, and then as it climbs uphill into Sheen Curve, you might spot a change of the tarmac there. There it is, that line across the circuit. Brand new tarmac laid earlier on this weekend, which is very smooth. Chatting to the drivers offers up lots of grip in these dry conditions and will rubber up over the course of the day. But should we get any rain, and there is a little bit potentially forecast over the course of this afternoon, you might get the oil and the oils seeping back up through that surface, so the drivers will be hoping that it stays nice and dry here at Brands Hatch. About to complete the first lap, and it is going to be the reigning champion and a man who is yet to be beaten so far this season who leads the way, from Ian Mitchell in 2nd place, but the fight for 3rd is certainly on. Paul Taylor feeling the pinch a little bit from Jonathan Baker, who's going to try and sneak his way at the inside as they head in towards Paddock Hill Bend. They lean on each other. There's a little bit of contact between the pair, but Jonathan Baker goes through and up into 3rd position, and now Paul Taylor is delayed. 2 wheels on the grass, sees Ian Graham trying to sneak his way up the inside at Druids, and Ian Graham goes through as well. So Paul Taylor didn't do a great deal wrong there, but was offline then as he came out of Paddock Hill Bend, lost momentum and lost a further place, and now, because he doesn't make particular friends with the apex down at Graham Hill Bend, he might lose a further place here as Simon Watts tries to squeeze his way through. The number 23 car of Simon Watts has the inside line heading in towards Surtees, and I think it might be another place lost there, unfortunately for Paul Taylor. No, Simon Watts did not quite make it through, so the order does remain the same between those, whilst Lewis Clark and Ian Mitchell, first and second, sprint away in the lead of the race. Jonathan Baker's there in third. We're side by side for fourth and fifth as Paul Taylor tries to re-attack the car of Ian Graham. Round the outside at Hawthorne, he's going to be brave, but he's got the momentum and he's got just enough room. So all the way around the outside, he makes it stick. So through and back ahead of Ian Graham he goes. So that's at least a place taken back now. So it's just the one place that he lost to Jonathan Baker at Paddock Hill Bend, but tried to re-attack as Ian Graham as they come through Dingle Dell, but he's not quite going to be able to clear his way through by the time they get up towards Sheen Curve, and he'll just have to sit behind as they head in towards the braking area for the left-hander now at Stirling, with, 8.5 minutes of the race remaining, and about to complete 2 laps now. So they continue on the new tarmac all the way down to where the Grand Prix circuit meets the Indy circuit, and that's again where you can see that line there on the screen, and that's where you move back off onto the old tarmac again from the new stuff that was laid earlier on this week. So 8 minutes to go. Over the start-finish line will shortly come this squabble still going on between Paul Taylor and the number 27 car of Ian Graham, fighting over what is going to be 4th and 5th position. Richard Avis still recovering from his troubles at the start. So in towards the braking area for Druids. Paul Taylor in 3rd place, I should say. 4th place is next up, which is going to be Ian Graham, then Simon Watts. I think there might be a gremlin in the timing system as well, unless one of the drivers has got a penalty possibly. So along the Cooper Straight, up towards the left-hander at Surtees, the Paramax car of Paul Taylor, still keeping the complete weed control car of Ian Graham at bay, the newly liveried car to the one he drove at Donington Park for the opening 2 races of the season. And then just shadowing them all of the time is the number 23 car of Simon Watts, who is not that far away, but he's not quite close enough to fully attack as they head in towards Hawthorne. The camera angle doesn't really tell you how much it descends from Pilgrim's Drop and then climbs back up towards Hawthorne, but equally as much how banked Hawthorne Corner is. Really does hug the car in towards the apex, carries a lot of apex speed through there. Also carry a lot of speed through Westfield Corner, which is where they're exiting now, and then up into the area where the new tarmac starts again as they head up towards the fast right-hand kink at Sheen Curve. Long gap back before we then see the next of the cars back through. Further down through the order, we've also got Richard Avis at the wheel of his number 77 car trying to make progress, and the car that is off and slowing to the right-hand side is 2 times runner-up in this championship, Gary Mitchell, who, again, I think is rather out there just testing cars again. It's one of the older diesel engine cars, but he's not involved in the championship, Gary. So he will allow some of the other cars that are in for the full season just to work their way through. So Gary Mitchell, runner-up in the championship in 2020 and 2021 at the wheel of the number 44 Mintex car, being harried now very shortly by the second of the Mintex cars, which is going to be that in the hands of number 21, Sarah Hall. Now the lead of the race has closed up a bit, I would say. Ian Mitchell was not that far away from Lewis Clark at the start of this lap. There was just 1.25 seconds between the pair of them. Lewis Clark last time through set the fastest lap of the race that we've seen so far, which was a time of 1 minute 53.1. However, Ian Mitchell was that little bit quicker than him, and the quickest car out there is the petrol engine car of Simon Walter. So the lead advantage is now down to 0.75 seconds now that I've refreshed the timing screen. And as they turn their way through Hawthorne, has the gap come down any further through the first sector of the lap? I'm not convinced it has again, you know. So they then flick their way through the right-hander at Westfield Corner and start to descend downhill towards Dingle Dell. Exactly 5 minutes remaining on the clock of this subtly shortened 12-minute race. And Ian Mitchell, I think, probably has closed the gap through the middle sector of the lap. It was only 0.761 of a second that separated the pair of them. Ian Mitchell gets a good run also heading out of Stirling's Bend. So the Powerflex car slowly starting to reel in our reigning champion. And as they head round through Clearways and Clark Curve and onto the Brabham Straight, there should be time for 3 more laps in this one. What was 7.5 tenths of a second this time is out, and it's out to nearly a full second now. It's 0.979 of a second first to second place. Jonathan Baker is 3 seconds back in 3rd place. 4th place is Paul Taylor, who still hasn't fully shaken away the attentions of Ian Graham that sits behind, and Simon Watts in the number 23 car is still within touching distance of that pair ahead as well. But the squabble for the lead of the race just subtly opening out over the course of that lap. A little puff of particulate again as the cars accelerate their way out of Graham Hill Bend and along the Cooper Straight before they then turn left and keep turning left on towards the Grand Prix circuit. Jonathan Baker, 4 times a race winner at Brands Hatch last year, sitting there in 3rd place at the moment. John Baker, who was in the podium, on the podium in the 2nd of the 2 races at Brands Hatch. He had a 4th and a 3rd for the opening 2 weekends of the season at Brands Hatch, did Jonathan Baker. Ian Mitchell had a 3rd and a 5th in the opening 2 races of the season, having qualified 2nd on the grid. Well, he qualified 4th here, but got that rocket of the start, which propelled him up to 2nd. But it does look as though he is now not quite matching the pace of Lewis Clark, our race leader, because the gap has certainly opened up a shade more, hasn't it? It was hovering around a 2nd, it's going to be north of a 2nd now. And if anything, Ian Mitchell is starting to fall into the clutches of the 3rd place number 10 car of Jonathan Baker as they twist their way through the left-hander at Stirling's. The top 3 looking fairly equidistantly spread, I would say, as they head up towards the conclusion of what will be lap number 5 this time through. So on towards Clark Curve. Lewis Clark leading from Ian Mitchell and Jonathan Baker. The gap 1st to 2nd is 2.6 seconds. The gap 2nd to 3rd is 1.6 seconds. And the fastest man out there at the moment of those top 3 is still the race leader. But Jonathan Baker in 2nd place was a full 1.4 seconds quicker than Ian Mitchell. So 2nd place really starting to close in, 3rd place really starting to close in on 2nd place. And we've also then got the squabble. Ian Graham's going to have to defend here from Simon Watts, who's trying to prise the door open and steal 5th. Can't quite make it through. So for the moment, Ian Graham hangs on to 5th place, but Simon Watts is certainly showing his hand here, wants to try and see if he can unpick the car ahead and squeeze his way through. Simon had 2 top 6 finishes at Donington Park. Ian Graham, I don't think was present at Donington. Yes, he was present at Donington, but he finished much, much further down through the order. Where was he? He was something like, I think it was 9th place in the 1st race, but then had a difficult 2nd race, Ian Graham. He didn't really pick up any points in that one. We've got 1 minute and 20 seconds to go. Fight still on for 5th and 6th place. Simon Watts still harrying Ian Graham, and all of the time closing in on them is the test car in the hands of Simon Walton, who is not eligible for championship points. He also won't particularly want to get embroiled in this battle of what are 2 of his paying customers that lie ahead. So the petrol engine car with its 300 brake horsepower closing in on the diesel engine 175 brake horsepower machines. Onto the brakes in towards the left-hander at Stirling's, Ian Graham from Simon Watts. And then is Simon Walton going to try and overtake them, or is he just going to back off the throttle a little bit and sit behind? I think it's the latter. Yeah, doesn't want to get involved in what is a battle for championship points. Now he might try and squeeze his way through on the start-finish line because he's got the extra grunt to do so without really affecting Simon Watts, and that's what he chooses to do. Through and past Simon Watts goes the man behind the championship. Tucks back in behind Ian Graham, and he might then try and pick Ian Graham off, possibly on the run-up in towards Druids, with now there only being a matter of seconds on the clock. So Simon Walton, dives at the inside of Ian Graham. Simon Watts sees the door is open, shows his nose, but can't squeeze his way through. So that means that Simon Walton is up into 5th position, but of course is not going to be scoring championship points at the wheel of that petrol engine development car for next year. Now our race leader, Lewis Clark, has subsequently extended his race lead ever further. 3.8 seconds it was between himself and Ian Mitchell as they came over the start-finish line last time through. Ian Mitchell is still lapping a little bit slower than the 3rd place car of Jonathan Baker, but they are now onto their final lap of the race. And there you can see the gap between 2nd and 3rd. Power flexed car with its black and yellow and purple livery starting to be closed in on by the Blue 10 car, with its Blue 10 sponsorship in the hands of Jonathan Baker. sliding the car round through Sheen Curve up towards Stirlings for what should be the final time of the race this time through in our first of 2 races we've got coming up for you this afternoon. Out of Stirlings, now Jonathan Baker edging ever closer. No such worries for our race leader. The reigning champion Lewis Clark is going to continue what has been a stellar season from him, having claimed both of the wins at Donington Park and qualifying on pole and setting fastest lap in each one of those races. He qualifies on pole and claims the win here, and I think will scoop up the extra 5 points for the fastest lap as well. Who's going to finish in second? It is just Ian Mitchell who finishes in second place. The catalyst to that was all about that good start for Ian Mitchell, instantly gaining second place from 4th when the lights went out. Jonathan Baker comes through to finish in 3rd position. Paul Taylor is 4th, Simon Walton is 5th. It'll be Ian Graham that will complete the top 6. Simon Watts comes through, finishes in 7th place. Jonathan Ogden from 12th on the grid picks up 8th position, so that was a good result from him. And then the 2 Mintex liveries cars are squabbling away still, which is the number 21 car of Sarah Hall, who has got herself ahead of Gary Mitchell. And it does look as though Sarah from up in the northeast of England is going to hopefully keep at bay the double former runner-up in this championship from 2020 and 2021, which is Ian Mitchell. So now we're heading up towards Sheen Curve for the final time. Turn our way through the right-hander up towards the left, which is Stirlings, and then once they head out of that, it's really just the final section at Clearways, which is really just the straight that links the Grand Prix circuit to the Indy circuit, and then it's up towards Clark Curve. And it does look as though Sarah Hall should have enough daylight in hand so as to hang on to what will be 11th place, but chased all of the way to the start-finish line by Gary Mitchell, who is not going to be able to offer up anything on the charge to the line. So Sarah Hall comes through now to finish in 11th place, and 12th place will be Gary Mitchell. There was one car that we lost out there on circuit, and that was Chris Broad, who sadly retired. By the look of things, coming out of Surtees just as we head on to the Grand Prix loop, I saw his car up against the barriers with what looked like a mechanical issue. So that's everybody through, which means very shortly we should be able to confirm the results for you. There won't be a graphic, but just confirm the results. Lewis Clark claims the win from Ian Mitchell in 2nd place, and Jonathan Baker was there in 3rd place. Paul Taylor was 4th, with Simon Walton in the development car finishing in 5th place, and 6th was Ian Graham. Simon Watts was 7th, 8th place was Jonathan Ogden, 9th place was Simon Waugh, and Richard Davis, despite pointing in the wrong direction when the lights went out because of contact with Simon Waugh, finished in 10th place. Sarah Hall was 11th, Gary Mitchell was 12th, and just one retiree, Chris Broad. So that's it for the Focus Cup. We will look forward to seeing them a little bit later on, and if you want any further details, you can log on to either Focus Cup website or head to tsl-timing.com, and you can pick up all of the results and confirm all of the timings from there as well. So that's all from us at Focus Cup. Join us for race 2 later on. Until then, it's goodbye.